2 years ago I did a review of Athearn's SDP40F and Amtrak's Phase 2 paint scheme. It's the second of the SDP40Fs that I've purchased from Athearn, and towards the end of the video I made a comment and more of a wish that they would also release one in Phase 3 paint, in Amtrak's Phase 3 paint scheme, so that I could have an SDP40F in all three of Amtrak's paint schemes, and that they were painted in. And well, wishes do come true. And so a year ago, this last April, Athearn made an announcement that they were going to release the SDP40F in Amtrak's Phase 3 paint scheme. The due date was originally set for January of this year. For whatever reason, it kept getting pushed back, and then finally this past week the locomotives were shipped out to dealers, and my local hobby shop got my pre-order in, and so now I have SDP40F in all three of paint schemes that they were painted in while they were in service with Amtrak. So let's go ahead and, like the previous review, since I already had my review of the Phase 1 Amtrak SDP40F, that was where I did a bit of the history on the locomotives, so I'm going to skip over going over the history of the locomotives for this review as well. But like the last review, let's go ahead and do a comparison of the three models together, and then we'll hook up some passenger cars and take a few laps around the layout. So the latest addition to my Amtrak roster is Amtrak 634. It is one of the last of the SDP40Fs that Amtrak took delivery of. There were 150 total, numbered 500 through 649. Like number 575 on the far track, 634 is one of the second versions, it's the second version of the SDP40F. The original version, of the SDP40F that you can tell is when you look at the nose, the middle locomotive, number 523, is from the first 40. It has a pointed nose, whereas 634 and 575 have a flattened nose, which was what they started doing after the first 40 of the locomotives came out. Also, like 575, it also has lower profile radiator and dynamic brake fans, whereas 523 has the higher fans on its roof. One thing I did find too was that this is actually a variation of the Phase 3 paint scheme. I've always seen the Phase 3 paint scheme as what was on the F40s growing up, and apparently on some of the SDP40Fs they have the numbers on the back rather than up on towards the roof on the back end. They actually have the numbers vertically on the back corners, which is an interesting little detail to that. I did check pictures online, actually, of all three of these locomotives, and all the details match perfectly with the pictures I've seen online of the locomotives. But this is the third version of the SDP40, or of the paint scheme that the SDP40Fs were painted in for Amtrak. All of them were delivered in Phase 1. the pointless arrows paint scheme as 575 is painted in the far track. And then some of them were later painted to phase 2, which is what 523 is in. And then some of them, I think the later ones were still around, they were repainted into phase 3. As with number 523, I pre-ordered number 634 from the trading station on Indianola Avenue in Columbus, Ohio, and there are actually 4 locomotives I think they have in phase 3 paint, both in DC and DCC. There are 2. There's another one like 634 that is in phase 3 that has no icicle breakers on the rear, the roof. There are 2 models that they have that do have icicle breakers. The reason I mentioned that is back when the first and second releases of the SDP40Fs were released, somebody on, I think it was trains.com's message boards mentioned that they were looking for the SDP40Fs that had icicle breakers. I didn't get the ones with the icicle breakers because the icicle breakers pretty much ran out west on the western trains west of Chicago, whereas here on the east side of Chicago, I don't recall ever seeing icicle breakers on any locomotives. But that's another one of the variations that they've added for detail-specific details on specific to the the locomotive numbers. So in addition to the body with the nose and the fans, Athearn's also done specific details to the other details on the locomotive, such as for example the horns. This is back before Amtrak standardized on their horns on these locomotives, and so each model has the correct horn for that particular locomotive. So but the detail work on these locomotives has been really amazing. It's come a long way since when I was a kid, when you would get a generic model of locomotive and they would put one paint scheme for each railroad, and even if the railroad didn't have that model, they'd put just slap the road name on it, and you'd only have one number for the locomotive. So that they've taken a lot of the work out of kit bashing, scratch building, that kind of thing. But there's always a place for kit bashing and scratch building. But the fact that you can get this kind of specific model detail on a locomotive is really amazing. Yes, it's a little pricey, but it's worth it, in my opinion. Again, like the other 2 models, 634 is a DC model. It's not DCC for various reasons that I just do not want to go into DCC right now. But I have seen video of the DCC models, and they look and sound terrific. It's not something that I really need at this point in time. But one issue I did run into with the latest locomotive, I was in a hurry to get on the layout and take some pictures of it, and I neglected, like the other 2, unlike the other 2, I neglected to check the wheel gauges to make sure everything was in alignment and everything. So when I went to run the locomotive, the rear truck literally bounced over the switches. I took it off the rails, turned it over, and it turns out the middle axle, the wheels were too close together. They were not engaged, which was surprising for a locomotive of this with this price and quality and everything. But fortunately, like the older Athearns, I was able to remove the clip off the bottom of the off the bottom of the locomotive truck, and I was able to take the wheel out, or the wheel set out, and re-gauge them and correct that. So not something I wanted to do for the first time before I even ran one lap with my new locomotive, but at least it was something easily corrected and nothing major. So anyways, with that, let's go ahead and get some cars hooked up and run a passenger train. Now, just to forewarn some of the nitpickers, I am modeling an alternate history of Amtrak, where in my world the SDP40Fs did not have the derailment problem that the real life SDP40Fs had. As a result, they lasted many years past where the real ones were retired. So as a result, these lasted into the early 90s, where the P40s began replacing them, hence why I have P40s and the SDP40S together on the same layout. And then of course later on the F40s started getting phased out with the P42s, P40s and P42s from General Electric. So that's my alternate history. So anyways, enough talk, let's go ahead and run some trains. there you have it. SDP40S and all three of the paint schemes that they came in with Amtrak. So it's quite an impressive contest now that I've got from Amtrak trains. Of course, as I said earlier, I run these along with my F40PHs as well as the P40s that Athearn came out with back in the early 90s. So anyways, thanks for watching. Special thank you to Athearn for making these beautiful models. Thank you again to the folks at the train station on Indianola Avenue here in Columbus for you know, all the work you folks do there to help promote the hobby and the service that you folks provide to make sure these beautiful models get out to the folks that need them and want them. So, since I did have a wish on the last video that has come true, I'm going to make another wish on this video that hopefully will come true as well, and that is that Athearn or Atlas or somebody makes a model of the General Electric P30CH. I've only seen those in HO scale once, and that was by Overland Models, I think it was, years ago when I was a kid. And those were brass models. And those are long out of production, and I think I've seen a couple of them on eBay. They're really expensive, but even though the Broadway, I've never seen them on the Broadway, and I've never seen them on the route through my hometown of Bucyrus, which is the route that I model here, although this is supposed to be Mansfield. I have seen pictures and video of the train, or the P30CHs on trains in Ohio. Pictures of them on the Lakeshore Limited along the Lake Erie, as well as on the Shenandoah, which used to go down through Moonville and Athens and Chillicothe. So, anyways, thanks for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed this video. I've got another major video project coming up that I think you folks will really like, especially those that have been following the layout for ever since I started construction back in 2003. So, anyways, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, comment, and have a good one, and happy model railroading.